You are listening to the Artwonk Podcast, a show where we take a deep dive into what it takes to be successful in marketing if you are a visual artist or craftsperson. We will explore how the art world works as well as how to better achieve your professional goals. I am Neville Parker, your host and resident Artwonk. So settle in and join me as we get today's show underway. Hi everybody and welcome to episode 4 of the Artwonk Podcast. Today we're looking at the three faces of the art world. So, welcome into episode 4, the three faces of the art world I've called this one. I believe there are 3 overriding character traits that most artists fall into. It's very common that we actually will tick more than one of these boxes, but generally we have one of these character traits that makes a fair assessment of how we might behave in the art world. And I thought it was time to share this with you before we moved into the planning and the market plan type stage of the storyline, because if we don't have a sense of who we are and how we might behave, then it's really hard to actually make our plans accurate enough to be of any use. So the 3 faces of the art world refer to creatives, technicians, and patrons. Now, in the last 2 decades, we've established this as a language base within our gallery to describe the artists that we meet or deal with. These are not rigid terms. They're not things that we actually expect people to behave in a specific way about. But it has given us a way of describing to somebody who wasn't present what our perception of a particular artist is when it's related to the business of a gallery or anything else that you might be planning on. So how do they work? Well, creatives, just as the name suggests, tend to be the ideas people within our art community. Creatives very often, but not always, will work in more than one medium. They're forever coming up with new ideas. They're kind of the magpies of the art world. They're distracted by bright and shiny things. Creatives are innovators. They're entrepreneurial. They are very high energy as a rule. And as such, they tend to move through their art journey from one thing to another at a reasonable clip. Technicians come alongside them. Technicians are not meant to be below or above, but they're a group who often will use the inspiration that the creatives drum up as starting points for what they do. Very often jewelers and potters, landscape painters who specialize in a particular style of painting will be technicians. They take the creative idea and then they refine it, something the creatives often don't have time to do because they've got so many ideas. And then we have the patrons. The patrons are the people who engage within the art community. Very often you would hear a patron say something along the lines of, I've just done a course in printmaking and I'm about to start one in landscape painting. I don't have any intention of selling my stuff, but I really love learning about art. So patrons are the consumers within the art groups. They engage fully, they go to the openings, they promote tirelessly, and they are artists, but they have not necessarily the drive or the expectation within themselves to master the technical aspects of a technician, and they are not gifted with the cruel burden of being an ideas person and constantly chasing that perfection that generates. As you might guess, I feel very much like I'm a creative. In fact, that's how we describe me within our circles. Somebody who bounces around, has lots of energy, tends to maybe not always finish well, well, that's me. So The patrons are incredibly important. They are the support network that holds the glue, so to speak, that holds the whole of the art community together. So we use these three terms when people come to the gallery presenting work or engaging with us and looking for some form of relationship. Now, I think it actually sums up quite well the terms that you might use to describe most of the art world in general. If you're looking at the fine art market, you have the creatives and the technicians and the patrons. If you're looking at the craft art market, you've got the three again. If you're looking at the corporate world, where we might look, say, at government or council level, there are, in fact, creatives, technicians, and patrons there as well, the supporters of the arts, the bureaucrats who run a lot of our funding structures. There are always those three groups. Now, you can be one, two, or three. I probably identify as a creative most, but because of years of training and practice, I'm also able to use my technician base quite well within my business. And because I'm such a fan of the art world and I work very hard at promoting and engaging as much as I can, I'm also a patron. There is no rank within this that makes one better than the other or one more important than the other. So why am I talking about creatives, technicians, and patrons? If you're looking at doing a plan and you can identify which of these you are, there are some guaranteed benefits and features and some pretty obvious negatives attached to each. And you can use that knowledge to help make your plan much sounder, much more informed, and hence much more actionable. So if you're a creative, for example, and your plan is to open a gallery, there's a high chance that you will be innovative, you will find the most amazing space, you'll bury an enormous amount of energy into the details like working out logos and, oh gosh, whatever it takes, you'll get it going. Creatives often do that very, very well. Where it starts to fall apart for a lot of creatives is after all of the new stuff is finished, all of the excitement's over, and it's now down to the mundane, everyday work stuff. That's when creatives have a tendency to have a weak spot. Enter the technicians. Technicians are very often people who find comfort in not necessarily repetition, but a structured, orderly way of doing things. As I said before, if you take potters or jewelers, if you're working with a medium and you're doing a repetitive process, there's a lot of room to be creative, but there's also a lot of comfort within that because there's stuff that you can rely on as being accepted norms. Technicians, however, are really good business people because they tend to get the bills paid. They tend to make sure of the detail stuff getting done. So a creative starting a gallery would be really well suited to find a technician to be part of their mix, either as a business partner or as a mentor. And then the patrons also a really important part of a gallery or a business opportunity. You need them very much because they're the people who go out into the world and spread the word. So if you're creative, you would know that you're going to be really strong in the beginning, but when it comes to the mid-ground, you're going to need help, and over the long term, you're going to need help. That's kind of the way this breakdown works. So let's take it back a step. And look at how a technician might find their strengths. A technician, if we're going to say, for instance, is going to be, we'll use pottery because I used that a minute ago. You've decided you want a business in pottery and you've decided that you're going to make really interesting vases as your primary focus. If you were a creative, it would take very little time before your vases look like teapots, then cars, then something else. A technician can be relied upon to keep their focus strong, but they may find that over time they get too comfortable and they don't evolve into the new phase that you need to within a marketing plan. So a technician, if they surround themselves with patrons, and creatives so that they can get inspiration and be challenged, and they can get support and somebody who's able to go out there and help rally up the troops to support them further. Again, see the mix. If you're a patron, then there's a very high likelihood that you enjoy going to classes and accruing knowledge and engaging in all the different levels of the art world. So patrons need teachers, and the teachers are nearly always the technicians, at least for the regular, reliable courses. Creatives often will do short-term courses, but then they get distracted again. This is not a problem, it's just a feature. So patrons, they really do get a lot out of making, learning, trying, engaging, supporting. That's actually something that works well for a patron. And they need to surround themselves with the technicians and the creatives. So this is the background that we describe artists to each other when the other member of our gallery wasn't there. If I say to them, I had a really cool creative in this morning who brought in some paintings, they would understand that I'm referring to somebody who at the moment is a creative painter, but may over time be presenting us with blocks of wood or some other medium because they've found a new way of expressing themselves. When we look at that in our business type conversation, I'm also describing somebody who might offer me an opportunity to make a splash, have something really wonderfully catching as a hook for our window, or to engage people in conversation. But I wouldn't be planning necessarily a whole marketing plan around this person, because there's a chance that they're not likely to, over time, continue to fulfill at that level. Same as if I say to them that I had a wonderful technician come in with exactly the same thing with the paintings, etc., then my staff would understand that I'm saying that this is somebody who's really solid in what they do, looks like they've been doing it for some time, and we can bank on them continuing to do it for some time more. That person's somebody I might plan a marketing campaign around over time. And if I say that I've had a patron in, then I've had somebody who has just learnt something new. They're showing me what they've done. I'm not anticipating that they're going to be looking for representation particularly, but I can be sure that if they're already visiting us and showing us their artwork, that they're going to be coming to the openings. They're a fan of our business. They're a fan of what we're doing, and they're basically making contact to let us know that they're engaged. So that's the way we view the three faces of the art world. If you can identify which of those three faces is your primary face, then when it comes to making our next block of information work for you, which is how to put a critical path plan in place and then a market plan, you can start planning both to your strengths, but also recognizing your weaknesses. Yeah, so there you go. Hope that has been some help. It definitely helps us when we're describing things. I take pride in being a creative, but I recognize that the reason I'm doing a podcast at the moment is because I need to make things, and this is another form of creative expression, and I love doing it. But there is a high likelihood that I will need to make sure that over time I keep at it. So therefore, I'll need to have plans in place to make this a regular thing, and I really am enjoying it. So here's hoping that I get the hang of it. Next show is going to be about critical path planning, and I'll explain that more fully during that episode. So thanks very much. Very much enjoy having this opportunity to talk to you. And I hope that if you are a creative technician or patron, that you're comfortable with that. And if you're not, and you decide to go about changing it, it's fully your right to do so. You will, through that identification process, work out what it is you've got to work on. So I look forward to hearing some feedback. And next time we run into each other, let me know what you think you are. It'll be fun to see if I agree. Take care. Hi everyone, just before we go, I wanted to remind you that we have an email address, which is theartwonk artwonk@gmail.com, and we also have a website, theartwonk.com. That's where we'll be keeping show notes and any other information that seems relevant to art marketing and sharing some of the information that comes up on the podcast. So thanks very much for your listening, and we're looking for an idea of what we should be calling the group. I think wonkettes or wonklets. I know Bill out there probably going to call us wonkers, but please, if you want to send us some feedback on what you think a follower of the Wonk podcast should be called, really interested to get your feedback. Thanks a lot. I'm off to stack elephants. Have a great day.